Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lift Shit Get Banged podcast. As you can tell, it's not Coach Sophia, it's Coach Ben doing a solo episode for this week. As I'm sure Sophia ran through on her solo episode a couple of weeks ago, we've been busy. Life's been crazy. So we've been doing solo episodes here and there to make sure we still get something out for you wonderful people, but we will be back to normality next week and back together. And you won't just have my low, gravelly voice to listen to as I try and record this podcast with a sleeping child upstairs. So I believe I've got quite a cool episode to dive into today. That is that most people think coaching is mainly about calories, macros, steps, and a training program. And of course it is, but we're going to explore how those are just tools that we use as coaches. The actual work that we do with our clients is behavior change. And it looks different for every client, it's dressed up in different ways, but behavior change is what we are working through with our clients. And of course, we're going to keep this as light-hearted as possible and keep it as engaging as possible, but it's such an important topic. And when you guys reach out for coaching with us, whether it's to work with us one-to-one, whether it's to do our group coaching programs, there's typically something that is keeping you stuck. And typically you might feel stuck, as in that's why you might reach out for a coach, is because you've been trying to do this yourself and you're just not quite sure why you can't do it or why it's not working. But there's normally a feeling of being stuck. And that feeling of being stuck and the reality of being stuck often comes from repeating behavior patterns and loops that you might not even be aware of. It's not often that we just don't know what training program to do, that we just quite haven't found the right exercises, that we just quite haven't found the right macro split or calorie target. Sometimes it can be a case of we just don't know if we're doing the right things, but often we're complex, aren't we? As humans, we're bloody complicated. So there's often something much deeper than that going on under the hood. And what I mean by behavior change is the thing that underpins everything. As coaches, we aim to understand, what is that pattern? What is that loop? And then we start to try and become more aware of it. What is it that triggers us to go into those loops? What tools and skills can we start to use to be more aware of it and practice a different behavior? And you can imagine, as we talk about it, how that then transfers into this stuff sticking for life, and it going beyond the 8 week training program that you get given or the calorie target that we start on. We need to understand, why have I not been able to do what I'm trying to do, and how can I change that? And a bit like Sophia said in her podcast a couple of weeks ago, where she touched on, why does this stuff sometimes feel so hard? And we can end up with this feeling of, why is it so much harder for me than everyone else? And quite often in our observation, it's because there's maybe more underlying patterns and behavior patterns, um, for person A than person B. So if person B doesn't really have too many behavior patterns to kind of unpick and understand and change, then their journey is going to comparatively feel a little bit easier. But if person A has been practicing all or nothing thinking, I'll restart on Monday mindset, a feeling of, I've been really good this week, so I'm going to treat myself, or the opposite. And I had a great week Monday to Thursday, messed up Friday, so I'm going to punish myself over the weekend. Uh, if person A is amazing at planning to do the thing, but it's just procrastination wrapped up as planning. You get what I mean? That stuff's going to take time, and it's going to take longer to unpick it, build awareness around it, and practice different behaviors. And I really think that's why, comparatively, we can sometimes look at other people and think, God, why does it seem so much easier for you than it does for me? But the good thing is, we can change it. We can do something about it. And that's what we do with our clients every single week. And that's what we've done with thousands of our clients over the years, is changed those behaviors and those patterns. And the best piece of advice and the biggest thing that I could hope for, whether it's a coaching experience that you're going into or you're going to be coaching yourself through behavior change, is to really, really go into your health and fitness journey, whether there's a fat loss element to that, I want to get stronger element to that, I want to be someone that goes to the gym, I want to, whatever the angle is, that you just go in open minded and willing to explore and learn and be challenged on what you think you already know about yourself and what you think it is that's stopping you. Because through being open minded and being willing to explore, what are the patterns that might actually be stopping me from doing this stuff, um, the quicker you're going to get to the goals that you're trying to get to. So let's dive into some of those patterns, because there's 6 really common ones that we see within our clients that a lot of us tend to have elements of, at least, even if they're not the main thing that's keeping us stuck. So all or nothing thinking. I think a lot of us can relate to this in some shape or form. I know I can. And it's it's what it says on the tin. It's that feeling of, I went over my calories, so now my day's ruined. I missed one session, so the week's completely messed up. I had a takeaway, so now I'm totally off plan. And the problem isn't usually the thing that's actually happened, it's how we react to it. And you'll see there's a theme here. A lot of this stuff is the story that we actually tell ourselves about the thing that's happened is where the damage is done, not the actual thing itself. That kind of leads us into all or nothing thinking's cousin. So I'll start again on Monday. It's the reaction to that all or nothing thinking loop. So it's gone wrong. We've written off the rest of the day. We then promise ourselves that we're going to have a fresh start on Monday. Monday's going to be different. We're going to be perfect on Monday. And we go too hard and we end up in the same position come Friday, starting again the following Monday. And again, that's nothing to do with the training program. It's nothing to do with a calorie target. It's nothing to do with the. I mean, I'm being a bit literal here. Obviously, it can be in some scenarios, but for argument's sake, it's not to do with those tools. It's that pattern. We can't be consistent if we're being all or nothing. If we're starting again and promising ourselves that things are going to be better. Both of these have a very distant cousin, which is, I've been good, so I deserve X reward. And there is nothing wrong with rewarding ourselves for our hard work. But what is damaging is, I've been good a week, so I deserve a blowout this weekend. I trained hard, so I deserve to eat whatever I want tonight. I've stuck to my plan for a week, so now I can completely switch off. And again, enjoying food is not the problem. The issue is when being consistent feels like we're suffering, and food becomes the reward for enduring that suffering. And it becomes I'm just about clinging to this so that I can then have a blowout on the weekend. And again, kind of on the flip side of that, we have, I messed up, so I'm going to punish myself. And it's kind of the other side of all or nothing. Instead of being too easy on ourselves, it's I overate yesterday, so I'm not going to eat anything today. I missed a session, so I'm going to double up and do 2 tomorrow. I had a terrible weekend, so I need to be really, really strict this week. And I think something that is hopefully starting to come across is that a lot of these can sound logical when we're the ones going through it and thinking to ourselves, you know, that punishment can feel like discipline, but most of the time it's just keeping that loop alive. Overeating, restriction, extreme hunger, cravings, overeating. So we're constantly putting ourselves into scenarios where we just can't be consistent because we're swinging from one extreme to the other. And I don't want to spend too long going into those kind of practical examples, but I think they're really important because we can start to see how, like I said, they sound quite normal when we whittle them down to the actual examples and how they might come across in our thinking, but they really can be the thing that is causing you to feel so frustrated and so stuck. And after months and months and months of repeating these behaviors, just so defeated that it's not working. And am I just stuck here? Is this just me? Is this just something that I can't do? The positive side of this, and we're going to move into the how do we now change that, because it can sound a bit doom and gloom when we're talking about how these behavior loops can make us feel. The positive side of this is that they can be changed. It's going through that process of awareness, which has to come from that curiosity of being open to learning new things about ourselves as we go through a coaching experience. But we build awareness, we become aware of what it is that triggers those behavior patterns. So, a really simplified example could be that if we try to approach our diet by having too big of a window without eating, that might work for some, but for you specifically in this example, it may lead to too much hunger, too much food noise, too many cravings, that we end up trying to white knuckle it because we think it's the right thing to do, but we just end up overeating because we've put ourselves in a scenario where we're starving. And we get home from work and we've had a really busy day and we've tried to not really eat all day, and we go to cook a nice chicken stir fry and the chicken's gone off, and then we're like, shit, what am I going to do now? And we're so starving, we just think, oh, like, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm just gonna, and we end up raiding the kitchen cupboards. We feel like we've overeaten, we feel guilty, we promise ourselves that we're going to try harder the next day. We may even punish ourselves and say, I'm not going to eat tomorrow and I'm going to do 2 gym sessions. Tomorrow arrives, we get to 3, 4 p.m. We can't not eat because we get so that again, we get that extreme hunger kick back in. We get the cravings kick back in. We get the food noise kick back in. And we think, oh, why did I decide to do that? All right, I'll just have this. And just having this leads to um, overeating, and we then tell ourselves we're going to be, and we can see it's just a loop. It's a loop that keeps us so stuck. And there were a few different examples in there of those different behavior patterns, but we need to understand what is it that's actually happening. That, and I don't want to make out like I'm trying to massively oversimplify this, because it's obviously more complex than we just need to eat more regularly. But that whole loop in that example I just ran through started with trying to have too big of a gap between meals because we felt like it was the right approach for fat loss. I don't know if my mic's picking it up, but my cat's just jumped in the litter tray next to me, so I hope it's not. Um, so we're aware of what triggered it. We can now start to use different tools and skills to not have that behavior loop repeat itself. So we may have in the example I ran through, we might decide to introduce a emergency snack that we keep with us for times when we notice our hunger getting to that, oh my God, I'm absolutely ravenous and hangry point. And we might have some emergency frozen ready meals in the freezer for those days where we get home and we've been super busy and we're exhausted. And if dinner goes tits up, we've got something there ready. And that then has shifted our environment to where instead of giving ourselves scenarios where we try to white knuckle it, we try to make a ridiculously hard decision under hard circumstances, it's a decision of, oh, okay, dinner's not gone to plan. Instead of ordering a takeaway, I have got that meal in there that we decided was for this scenario. So we're starting to set ourselves up to be more successful. We're making it easier to be more consistent. We're making it harder to put ourselves in those scenarios where that behavior pattern can repeat. And I think I've got my point across there, because this stuff can be something that you can talk about all day and can start to run off into the weeds of it a little bit. But it's that process of identifying the pattern, identifying the trigger, and starting to put things in place that make it easier to avoid it. And you can just see how, and obviously there's a big piece of that is awareness, pausing, the kind of mental side of it. It's not just about the practical, and we'll dive into that another time, because that could be a whole, I could go on and talk about that for 10-15 minutes. This podcast episode was really just about highlighting to you guys that if you feel really, really stuck, it goes beyond calories, protein, training programs. It's often understanding the behavior patterns that we get stuck in that are stopping us from achieving what we're trying to achieve. And if you approach those patterns with curiosity, with an eagerness to learn about yourself, and an eagerness to go through that process of identifying what are those patterns, what are those triggers, what could I put in place to help myself to be more consistent, it's going to put you in a really good spot, whether you're working with a coach or whether you're going through this journey solo. So I hope you guys enjoyed that and found some value in that. We will be back to normality next week, and there won't be any more 5:30 a.m. Sunday morning gravelly solo episodes from myself for a while. But as always, I've loved chatting with you guys, and I'll catch up with you next week.